Today we've got a great malicious compliance story of a terrible team player threatening to quit their team and join the opposition. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, threaten to take my cats? Lose 80,000 euros. Hi, I'm OP. I initially posted this to Pro Revenge, but the post was removed due to it not being revenge. I got suggested to post it here. I'd like to share my story. I had to shorten the story a significant amount. I hope it still makes sense. The numbers at the bottom are not the exact amount, but ballpark and relative. How it started: early in my teens, I tumbled into a deep depression and struggled for a long time. Around 8 years ago, after I broke through my depression thanks to therapy and medication, I also figured out I'm transgender. Fast forward half a year, I met my now ex, let's call them X. Within the first week of dating, I poured everything out. I told X I wasn't ready to socially transition at all. Mind you, I only recently got a decent paying job, still lived with my parents, etc. X seemed very supportive and assured me they have no problem whatsoever with me being who I am. And so 4 years passed when we finally decided to buy a house together. X's parents, however, were loaded, and they made a nice donation to X by splitting up their savings between siblings when we told them about our plans. At this point, we also discussed that if things were to go sideways, we would just friendly part ways and split everything back to each other's original investment. We made some offers and ended up buying a nice place in between our two places of work. Since I had a car, commuting for me was easy, but for X, it was more difficult. They had to take public transport every day for an hour there and one back. Out of the frying pan, into the fire. We adopted 2 cats as we were both animal people and COVID just hit, so I wouldn't feel so lonely when working from home while X was out working on site. However, the high I was riding off of, finally being independent and being able to live my own life, was short-lived. See, my job requires me to be on call for several days of the month, usually 7, 14 if a colleague is ill. My phone would ring in the middle of the night, waking us both up. We never really argued before, but I recall this as the breaking moment. X started acting in a way that I'd already seen before, my parental home. In situations like this, I learned that agreeing is usually the quickest way to end confrontation. And so I slept on the couch, not even a month after moving into my own house. Things escalated from there. After a few more months, I was doing all the work around the home. I was the only one caring for the cats. If I didn't do it, nobody would. Besides that, I wasn't free to be who I wanted. I received mean comments when I did something gender-affirming. For example, a new haircut. Note that at this point, I was not ready to come out yet. I created an entire plan and timeline for myself. 2022. During the course of 2022, X did their best to keep me down, but I wouldn't let them. At some point, X decided it would be easier to give up. We had a talk where we agreed we'd mutually break up and divide everything fairly. I had every intention to keep the house, as my cats got used to it. I made some friends in the area, and my work was relatively close. As X had no intention to keep the house, commuting to work while their parents lived in the town they worked in, we went on from the assumption that I would keep the house. One evening, somewhere in November last year, we had an argument over the money that I'd have to pay them. It started small as X had listed a broken vacuum cleaner on the list of items, and I'd started asking questions if we could scrap it. The argument evolved, and X threatened to take my cats from me as part of the deal. This was the hill I was willing to die on. Never threaten to take away my cats. I stopped arguing and started calling a friend as I needed some support. X knocked my phone out of my hands, picked up their phone, called their parents, and put them on speakerphone. The words X spoke will haunt me forever. OP is trans and wants to be a insert gender. My first instinct I won't share, but you can imagine. After calling a helpline, I calmed down and I gathered my courage and called up everybody I could think of and told them I wasn't going to let X win this one. An hour after X's initial phone call, their dad showed up and started threatening lawyers and spouting things like that I was mentally ill, I would never be an insert gender, and that they would do whatever it cost to get the house from me or leave me with as little as possible. Revenge malicious compliance time. Fast forward a week or so, X sent over a new version of the proposed financial resolution. The amount that I had to pay X was increased by a significant amount. I wanted this to be over quickly, so I just agreed, as long as X would cover the costs of the notary, as their amount was the maximum I could borrow from the bank. They did not know this. X did not agree and hiked their price again. stating that if I don't agree, the price will just continue to go up. X made an entire Excel spreadsheet detailing their investment as well as mine. What I noticed was that in the Excel, everything was tied together. If X hiked their price, the price to buy me out was getting hiked as well. And that's when I realized I had them by the balls. See, they were blindsided and thought I would do anything to not move to my parents. I argued back and forth and played dumb at one point, just to drive up the price. The email stated that X forgot to calculate how much more the house was worth now than 2 years ago, and hiked the price by 20%. As per usual, X copy-pasted their calculations and said, "This is the price you pay me," or "This is the price I pay you." And that's when I took my chance. I agreed to let X buy me out for the amount specified, and in my reply, also stated that all previous negotiations of who pays the notary would also be valid. The buyer. I ended my email with, "I don't have to remind you that an agreement over email is just as valid as a contract." I pushed them to contact a notary within a reasonable time, or I would seek legal counsel to force them to pay my share. Fast forward 2 weeks, and I receive a call from the notary that they are working on the deed and need my details. Approximately a month later, it would be ready to sign. I double-checked the numbers, it was all there, and shortly after, it was signed. The reason I'm posting this now instead of at the end of 2022 is because, like I said, X didn't want to keep the house. It went up for sale immediately, approximately 40,000 euros above market value. I had the house favorited and checked periodically. Every so often it would drop in price and receive the new sticker on the website. It dropped approximately 60,000 euros before yesterday in total when it was finally sold. I calculated the damages based on their handy Excel sheet, and if we assume the initial fair split like we agreed 3 to 4 years ago, my ex lost about 40,000 euros of their own investment, not only in buying me out, but notary costs, taxes, etc. If we assume the split I initially agreed on to get it over with, my ex lost out on 80,000 euros. I'm now living my life to the fullest, with friends and an amazing partner who is truly supportive. Lesson learned, however, I bought a new place for myself, funded by X. I will never share ownership of ever again. Never threaten to take away my cats. I am right there with OP. You can tear me down, you can say some nasty things about me. It'll hurt, but I'll get over it. But try to do something like take my pets? You're essentially trying to steal my children at that point. I think there's a lot of people willing to go full John Wick when their pet is in the crosshairs. Our next story is, you want me to get the attention of your husband's commanding officer? It's your funeral. So over the past few days, I've become friends with a retired army officer that I'll call Belle. She's been delighting me with stories of her service, and she shared this wonderful story that I think you all will enjoy. Names and some details have been changed to protect the innocent. Belle was a young second lieutenant at her first posting. As she put it, "My college diploma hadn't even arrived in the mail and I was scared as heck." Fortunately, she got on the non-commissioned officer's good side and settled in pretty nicely. One afternoon, she was at work when in storms an officer's wife, looking like she was in the mood to cause heck. Belle keeps her head down, trying to stay busy, when she hears the dreaded words, "I'm talking to you, soldier." Belle looked up and saw the woman, let's call her Karen because why not, standing in front of her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Belle asked. "Yeah, I'm Major MC I'm so important's wife, and I need to speak to Colonel Stone." "Do you have an appointment?" "He's busy," Belle asked. "Just go get him. I'll stand right here until you do." Belle looks around, wondering what the heck she's supposed to do. She didn't want to risk her job because Colonel Stone was known around the base for having a fierce temper. "I'll have you knocked back down to private if you don't do as I say," Karen shouts. "Now move." Wanting to get away, Belle got up and walked towards the colonel's office, intending to get away for a long enough coffee break that Karen will forget. When she looked back, she sees Karen is watching her like a hawk. So there goes that plan. Colonel Stone's door is closed and Belle knocks on the door. "Yes," Colonel Stone barked. "Sir, it's Second Lieutenant Belle Smith," she said. "Come in." Belle opens the door, does the customary salute, and he immediately notices how nervous she is. "What is it?" "Major MC I'm so important's wife is here and she wants to speak to you," Belle said, her voice squeaking. "Does she have an appointment?" "She just said to go get you and she wouldn't leave until you saw her." "I see. Did she threaten to knock you down to private?" "I say she did." Colonel Stone nodded and then said in a voice that scared Belle, "Send her in." Belle salutes and then goes back to Karen. Karen looks absolutely smug. "You'll see you now," Belle said. "See, now that wasn't so hard, was it?" Karen said, strolling over to the Colonel's office. It's at this point that a first sergeant named Sanders comes in. He just sits down, and as the office door closes, he counts down in a low voice. 3, 2, 1. "What the heck were you thinking?" Colonel Stone shouted. For a good 5 minutes, he proceeded to tear Karen a new behind, telling her that she isn't permitted to wear her husband's rank, and that if she tries pulling anything like that ever again, her husband will be busted down to private faster than he could sneeze. Karen left the office like a bat out of heck, white as a sheet and quaking. Belle never saw her again, but she and the Major got divorced shortly afterwards. According to Belle, he realized what a liability she'd be to his career. I honestly hear a lot of these kinds of stories where there's a partner who, because of their husband or wife having an important rank or important stature in this area, they think they can go and flaunt around and get all this special treatment. It's one thing to get some extra respect from people when you yourself didn't actually do anything to get it. It's another thing when you go out of the blue to try to go to the boss's boss and throw your weight around like you actually have any say. Our next story is, "Fine, we'll gladly let you leave." This happened recently. We have a monthly local basketball event, normally 4 to 6 hours. It's all in good fun and we often play under the winner stays on rule. Originally, people would create a team and come play. This way you could play with your friends, but it used to cause an issue with good players only wanting to play with good players, and sometimes bad teams only want to play with their friends, making it uncompetitive. If you come late or don't have a team, you're often treated as a sub. So now LJ, the event organizer, makes sure teams are spread out to ensure everyone gets a chance of winning and staying on. My team consisted of myself, a guy LJ knew from playing in the park, we'll call him Parker, 3 other guys, Tony, James, and Mello, all fake names. LJ thought we were a decent team as Parker and I play often, as well as Tony being quite tall. We just played our first game and we lost. It wasn't a big deal, as we often all treat these as a feeler game and see how intense and good everyone's playing. Parker took a majority of the shots because he wanted to play point, a position where you start with the ball. I didn't complain as I wanted to know his play style. The team we lost against was good, but they weren't amazing. Second game comes around, played them again. Parker's doing the same thing and I'm playing well. I have 6 out of our 6 points, playing 1s and 2s. It's a tied game and Parker is ball hogging and missing. I keep calling for the ball, but he's just forcing shots up with multiple defenders on him. We end up losing and he is hot. He is shouting and complaining about how we should have done better, to which one guy goes, "He's not passing the ball." This man has the audacity to then lie and go, "What do you mean? I'm the only one keeping our team in the game." I kicked off and shout, "We had 6 points. I scored all 6 points. Shooting and scoring aren't the same thing." He's now mad and complaining about how we're holding him back. We've now been there for about an hour, and one of the guys on the team we lost to has to go for a collection. Parker's still shouting and complaining about how we're holding him back and talks about how he's now leaving us for a better team. We were more than happy for this to happen. During events, it is often when you have a team, you stick to that team in the name of fairness and don't allow changing. Once this man left, we stopped losing games and went on a massive winning streak, berating Parker repeatedly. He was doing his antics with the other team as well. Eventually, the guy came back and they didn't need him anymore. This man then had the audacity to try and weasel himself back into our team. We rejected him under the pretense of, "We already have a full team, sorry." He was livid and went to LJ complaining, but there was nothing he could do because it was his decision to originally leave when he didn't have to. As somebody that does love basketball, I can totally just imagine myself in this scenario, and I can't tell you how good it would feel for some selfish ball hog of a player to say, "This team is trash, I'm gonna go find greener pastures where I can take all the shots I want and we're gonna win." Players like that who finally leave or get booted from a team are very likely the catalyst to kick off a major winning streak, both because all players on the team no longer have any ego to contend with, and also because it's so much more fun and you're so much more committed to playing harder when you don't have to play with somebody like that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.